Welcome to the CEO of Destiny podcast, where you will find the tools to fulfill the purpose of your generation and wildly succeed in the marketplace. And now your host, Andre J. Benjamin.
About take us back to emotionally where you were at. You went from $12 to $1,000. Okay, that's not like we're not gonna just breeze past that and I hit $1,000. Like, no, you went in and you were like, this better work. You know, there had to be that mindset of my parents invested in me, and not only that, I'm trying to really bet on myself and see, does this work? Can you take us back to where you were at, both emotionally, mentally? How did that feel to look at and to count up those final numbers, and then to know, you know, if you sold out, how did that? Where were you at? Take us to that process.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think there's always like these things like, be they goals or just events that we always think like, if that happened, that would feel like X, Y, and Z. And I think that we sometimes maybe like dramatize them in our heads, right? So we think, oh man, that would be a real big thing. And at the end of the day, it's just a thing, right? And at the end of the day, I just remember my mom, like she was like my bookkeeper person and helped me like sell stuff, and which was so sweet of her. And all I could think was like, I just want a cheeseburger and I want a nap.
Sorry. You're fried.
Yes. So I remember her being like, aren't you so excited? And she'd total up when we'd have like a little space, and then she'd circle it and just like try and like low key, like show me these numbers. And they just made like 0 sense to me. Like I was like, yes. I don't even know how this is happening. And so I was just so tired.
Yes. So tired. You put in work. You were on the other end of it.
Yeah. And I think really it was so shocking that I had really felt like, well, if I make my $100 back, then that would be good. Like that would be acceptable, you know? And so, making a lot more than that, I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is something I could really do. And at that point, I also found myself thinking, I mean, this was still in the middle of Kansas. That's where I live now, and where I went to school. And I can remember that also like kind of making me process like, well, if I could do that here, what could I do somewhere else? And kind of losing some contentment in that. And at that point, I like had looked up an art school in Chicago and was like, okay, actually back on the table, instead of being like, actually, this process is working. You are doing what you should do here. Being like, nope, I think I'm going to look at some other options. And so process through this art school thing again. My parents lovingly just waited for me to process through that. And they really did just let me walk through the whole thing and be like, okay, find out what's going to transfer, find out how much that's going to cost you, find out how much longer you're going to be in school. And ultimately, like I was like, yeah, I'm going to stay here and do this thing. And I think always in the back of my head was this idea that I would move somewhere bigger and that I would do it bigger. And at this point in my life, I'm just really glad I didn't. Like, I'm just really glad that I didn't. I think that had I went that route, I would have been looking at creating things in a commercial capacity, that all of a sudden it wouldn't be the place that you can't find 3 of the same thing because there's 300 or 3,000. And all of a sudden I've lost this target audience that I saw in my booth there, that I would switch people. And I don't think that would work well for me because I'm also not those people. And so I don't understand all of the decisions that go into that. And so I think I would not have, I don't know how it would have ended, but I don't think it would have been as satisfying as what I do now, because I do have the time to be able to pour into my clients at the level that I'm at. And I really like that.
So that level of personalization versus being able to, if you are doing it more in a commercial side, it's, you turn it into a commodity, and now you're competing on price and you're losing because that whole personal field of how you wanted to connect with stories and how you're creating for a specific demographic shifts. I like how you spoke on being in Kansas City. One of my questions for you that I had was, where are you hailing from, and how does that play into how you create and what you create? How does that play into, how is that part of your story?
Sure. Yeah. And I'm not even in Kansas City. I'm just in Kansas. That's our state. So I grew up in a town of like 2,500 people. And I still have fabulous clients that I mail stuff back to my home zip code. And that's a fun thing too, to know that there are people who, supported you with a pop dollar on the bus that now live in Washington, D.C. and buy some of my stuff there. So that's kind of fun. But so I grew up in a really small town, and then my husband and I we live outside of Wichita, and we live in the country. And I'm really bad at numbers of towns, like really bad. So I would say, the town that we live closest to has a Walmart, but not a Target. And that's how I tell the size of places. So we have a Walmart, but not a Target.
That's big. You're like, if the commercial guys don't come here, then that's actually a good gauge. When you talked about being college educated and you talked about marketing as well as communications in some of your studies, if I heard correctly, and I've done my research right, how did that play into your actual work that you do now? Does it play a role? Does your training?
Yeah, absolutely. So are you familiar with Gallup, the Gallup organization Strengths Quest?
Yes, I am.
So my top 5 are communication, ideation, strategic, futuristic, and includer. And so, which means nothing to anyone listening who doesn't know about that, but totally go look it up. It's way better than the Enneagram. And I know that I'm going to take some shade for saying that out loud, but check it out. So it's great. Anyhow, with that kind of strength setup, the strategic and futuristic, I have a hard time thinking about today. I'm always thinking about tomorrow. And that has always been true for me. And so at 17, graduate, I'm like, oh, you know what? College costs money. So you know what I can do? Work harder and get out fast. That was my goal. So I was like, if I'm not going to be a doctor, let's just wrap this mess up. So I thought I could get out in 3 years, and I could have if I stayed with communications. When I switched to marketing, I was going to have to add an extra semester, and I knew I could still pick up my communications degree as well. So I did go ahead and double major. So I had both of those bachelors. I would say that the marketing side, well, I think there are a lot of things that I learned in both of those degrees, but ultimately I feel like education teaches you how to continue to educate yourself. Both of those industries are constantly changing. I remember constantly being preached at, the media is the message in college. That made no sense to me. It makes a lot more sense today. And we'll just leave that at that. And so, but things like marketing, I'm marketing on platforms and things that weren't even a thing. I mean, Facebook at the time that I was in college, you had to and I actually did this. I was the nerd that did this for our school. You had to actually petition that you were a real life college to get Facebook. So I had to fill out all this information about the history of our college of, wait for it, less than 500 students to say we were real. I'm sure they were like side-eyeing it, like, that ain't real. That's not real. She just collected some friends and made up a fake college. So, things like that, I have to be able to, on the marketing side, there's just always things to learn and figure out. And so I think
marketing that, by the way, shout out to your marketing skills to get you lobby to get you guys on Facebook. Keep going.
Right. So, so I would say that there are a lot of things as far as just understanding how business works and target audience. And I told the kids this week, I was like, if I sell 5 bracelets on the bus, but beads cost $2, can I get 5 pops? Did I have a trade or did I have a business? And so that was fun, listening to them process through that. I'm yeah, if I run out of all my beads, I still have to have money in the business. And so kind of that back half, that doesn't really change, right? And that's not my favorite part of my business for sure, but being able to know that side is probably one of the more helpful things in my education.
Absolutely. When many people say that our culture right now is more driven by events rather than process. So for instance, the wedding over the marriage, or the childbirth over the actual pregnancy, or the weight loss and the muscles over the, you know, deliberate eating and the changes in your eating and the, you know, strict workout regimens and getting to sleep at specific times or refreshing, doing different things to take care of mental health. What would you, I mean, even if you look at somebody who we consider in our society a super achiever, whether it's Venus Williams or Serena or Michael Phelps, his Wikipedia page has like 19,000 words and only 27 of the words are devoted to talking about the actual process that is responsible for all those other words. How important is process for you in what you do? Because you talk a bit about some of these aspects of process for you. That's why I'm fascinated by and intrigued by when you talked about being the child on the bus yourself and saying, okay, parents won't give me money for pop every day. I might be able to get it a few days from them, but I can't convince them every day. What do I have within my own hands to be able to create and add value to someone? And you sell them a bracelet and they give you them. I mean, so how important is process to you? And can you break down a little about that? Because I'm going to actually pivot to talking about asking you questions about where you work out of. So we have
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's really funny. I actually had a bracelet that I wore a lot of last year that just said, do the process. Wow. Do the process. Because I think you're right. Like, we absolutely are in a society that we see the finish, and then there's this huge disconnect as to how we got there. And I mean, that's absolutely true in everything. And you pointed on so many things there. And I see that especially like in young people. I work closely with some high school girls, and just like, how do you encourage them that you don't wake up and have these things happen, that like, you're not, yes, some people post a TikTok video and have 10,000 followers immediately. That's not the normal, right? Like, no. And so I think for me, looking at the process like is huge and also a hard thing. So for me, I have went through the process of creating this jewelry, and I can do that all day long. But there's also this business aspect in those processes. And honestly, I even had a business coach last year for a short time, which was like a hard thing to be like, okay, is this going to give me a return on my investment to go through this? But we had talked on the phone, and she said, I think that you need encouragement to set up your behind the scenes processes. And she was totally right. And sometimes for me with my process, I want to jump the gun on some things. So I might create something and I want to show it. Like, I want to share it. I know that people are going to like it, but I'm also not ready to fulfill that. Like, I know that my custom line is so long, or I know that I need to stock a couple of stores first. And so there's this, there's always this huge temptation to jump the process and to try and go for the quick fix. But ultimately that always leads to frustration for me, and frustration for my customers. And I don't want to do that. Like, oh, hey, here's what I'm launching, but also it might be 6 months from now. Like, no, make the plan, do the process, and get there. And so part of doing the process for me too is that you're doing that every day. And I don't think the process ever gets to end. And so I'm always trying to, finagle things, change things. And I think for like young people, think about what I always encourage people that I talk to, like, I feel like more often than not, like, I'll be told by like a teenager, like, oh, I want to be a YouTuber. I'm like, awesome. What are you doing about that right now? Well, I'm telling you that I want to be a YouTuber. Well, did you make a video? Like, do you have a YouTube channel? What? No. I'm like, do you have a one-to-one initiative at your school? Do you have a laptop? Do you have what do you have? Like, how can you do this? How can you do this right now? And I think looking at how can I do what I can right now and slowly work up to other things is really, a huge battle within the process, and trying to start developing a process instead of hoping that someone hands you a business, hands you 10,000 followers and all the things. And then, you're not even going to know what to do with it. You're going to spend all your $5 and you're not going to have a business. You're going to have a flash in the pan.
One of my mentors told me years ago and said, don't allow your talent to take you where your character can't keep you, right? So don't allow your talent to get you to a place where your character can't keep you. And so there was a juvenile, the movies are really juvenile, but people have a certain palette, they watch it. But Adam Sandler, I used to really be into a lot of Adam Sandler films. It's a disclaimer. And what does it say about Adam Sandler's films? That most of his films, it said that people watched them secretly at home. They wouldn't go see them in the theater. They looked at the stats and they said that people were watching them at home. His biggest numbers were people watching them at home, which is hilarious. So, but I went and saw this movie, Click, and without giving the spoiler alert for people who haven't seen it, it's just meets this mysterious figure that gives him a remote control because he goes to Bed Bath and Beyond, and there's Bed Bath, and then he finds the section called Beyond.
Yes.
And so he gets this control, and this control allows for him to fast forward through things. But you're missing out on the character development. You're missing out on the lessons that are had there. So I love how you talked about someone coming to you and saying, I want to be viral. I'm going to blow up. I'm going to be famous for being famous. What are you going to be famous for? I'm going to be celebrated for just being famous. You know, I'm going to wake up and go shopping every day and just be on a reality show. I don't know. It's weird that we've basically discouraged people from process, but the actual process is where the actual gold is. And I know it's not fun to talk about process, but it is very beneficial for those that actually know that there are no shortcuts. I mean, and I hate to say it because I know there's a lot of people that listen to that and they may think that. So when we have CEOs, we have business owners, we have investors, we have different people from various jurisdictions of life. And one of the things that there's a verse that hit me, and also something that was depicted in the Charlton Heston 10 Commandments and also the Prince of Egypt, where God says to him, what's in your hand? You know, and the staff that he's been carrying for all this time as a shepherd is now going to be used for something else. And so I love the fact that you pointed out that you started to look at, well, what do I have of value? What can I do? Most people never get to do that inventory of self. And even how the self-awareness that you spoke to of betting on yourself, even to getting a coach. Most of us don't want to go through that process of saying, oh, what a waste of money. I mean, why am I going to spend money on something that I don't even know if it's going to actually pan out? Why would I? Well, because you talked about things like the Strength Finder. There's other people take the DISC assessment. Other people take the, there's the Kolbe Index. There's so many of them that people can take, but it has to be for the person that almost has the growth mindset and the self-awareness for doing that. What can you speak to us about the Pearl? Talk to us about the Pearl. We want to know about.
I will. I'm going to.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do us a favor. If this was useful in any way for you, please go to iTunes and leave us a review. Reviews will allow others to easily discover the podcast. If you'd like more information and to receive a free download, rediscover your destiny, go to ceofdestiny.com. Thanks again, and tune in next time.